The gunshot echoed across the dusty plains of Wyoming Territory, 1876. As Tucker Vance hit his mark dead center, another empty whiskey bottle shattered against the rock face. He reloaded his Colt revolver with practiced efficiency that betrayed nothing of the storm brewing inside him, a tempest of impatience and restlessness that had followed him since the war ended 11 years ago. "Waste of good ammunition," came a gravelly voice behind him. Tucker didn't bother turning around. "Morning to you too, Frank." Frank Hollister, owner of the Lazy H Ranch and Tucker's employer for the past 3 years, dismounted his horse with a grunt. "Got a new batch of horses coming in from Denver tomorrow. Need your touch with them." "Always do," Tucker replied, holstering his revolver. At 32, he was the finest horse trainer in 3 counties, a skill that earned him steady work but little peace. The horses responded to his firm hand and uncompromising nature. People, not so much. "Also got something else coming in on that same train," Frank said, a hint of mischief in his weathered face. "Charles Thompson's daughter from back east. Seems she's decided Wyoming might cure her of city living." Tucker's jaw tightened. "What's that got to do with me?" "Her father's offered good money for someone to teach her riding. Proper riding, not that side saddle nonsense they do in Philadelphia." Tucker spat in the dirt. "Get one of the boys to do it. I break horses, not teach society girls how to perch on one." Frank's bushy eyebrows rose. $5 extra a week says you'll find the patience." 10, Tucker countered automatically. 7, Frank offered. "And you get Sunday afternoons to yourself while she's here." Tucker considered this. Sunday afternoons off were rare as gold dust during the busy season. "Fine," he conceded, already regretting it. "But first sign of tears or vapors, I'm done." Frank chuckled, mounting his horse. "She arrives tomorrow at noon. Thompson says she's headstrong but willing to learn. Might be a good match for you, Vance." "I train horses, not women," Tucker called after his departing boss, but the words were lost to the wind. The next day, Tucker stood impatiently at the station, the noon train billowing steam as it groaned to a halt. He'd worn his least worn shirt out of minimal respect, but kept his gun belt on. This was still Wyoming Territory after all, civilized only in patches. Passengers disembarked, mostly men in various states of trail dust and determination. Then came a flash of emerald green that caught Tucker's eye like a signal fire. The woman who stepped onto the platform wore a traveling dress that probably cost more than his monthly wages. Her chestnut hair was pinned beneath a small hat, and she carried herself with the unmistakable confidence of Eastern breeding. Tucker approached reluctantly. "Miss Thompson?" Her eyes, a clear hazel that reminded him of shallow creek water over stones, assessed him quickly. "Mr. Vance, I presume? Father telegraphed that you'd be meeting me." Her voice lacked the affected delicacy he'd expected. Instead, it carried a forthright quality that caught him off guard. "Your luggage?" he asked, keeping his words minimal. "Just these 2. She indicated a large trunk and smaller valise. "I understand practicality is valued here." Tucker raised an eyebrow but said nothing, securing her luggage to his wagon. He offered a hand to help her up, but she was already climbing aboard with surprising agility. "I've been sitting for 3 days," she explained, settling her skirts. "I'm quite ready to move under my own power." The journey to the Lazy H stretched 15 miles through rolling grassland. Tucker maintained silence, but Miss Thompson seemed determined to break it. "I should properly introduce myself," she said after several miles. "Delilah Thompson." "Though most call me Del." "Tucker Vance?" he replied shortly. "Yes, Father mentioned you're to teach me riding. He says you have a gift with horses?" Tucker kept his eyes on the trail. "Your father's paying good money. That's all that matters. Actually, Mr. Vance, what matters is whether you can truly teach me. I'm not here for a passing amusement. I intend to become proficient enough to work alongside the ranch hands." This drew Tucker's attention. "Work alongside. Madam, no offense, but ranching isn't ladies' work." Del Thompson's mouth curved in a smile that held no humor. Many things aren't ladies' work until ladies decide to do them, Mr. Vance. I've come west to stay. My father's ranch needs managing, and I intend to learn every aspect of it. Your father owns a ranch here? This was news to Tucker. He's just purchased the old Creedmoor property. Perhaps you know it? Tucker knew it, 5,000 acres of decent grazing land that had fallen into disrepair after old man Creedmoor died. That place needs more than a woman's touch to bring it back. It needs work, intelligence, and determination, she countered. Gender has nothing to do with it. They rode in silence again, Tucker reassessing his passenger. Charles Thompson must be wealthy indeed to purchase such property for his daughter's Western experiment. He wondered how long it would take before she fled back east. We start tomorrow at dawn, Tucker said as they approached the ranch. Wear trousers if you have them. No skirts. If he expected shock at such impropriety, he was disappointed. Dell merely nodded. I came prepared, Mr. Vance. Dawn it is. Frank Hollister welcomed Dell with the courtly manners he reserved for ladies and important cattle buyers. He showed her to the small but comfortable guest cabin normally reserved for visiting horse traders. Tucker retreated to the stables, where the world made sense and creatures communicated without words or expectations. Dawn broke clear and cool the next morning. Tucker had already saddled 2 horses his own mount, a steady gray gelding named Ghost, and a gentle mare called Honey for Dell. He was checking the cinch on Honey when he heard footsteps approaching. Dell Thompson appeared dressed in men's canvas trousers, a simple button-up shirt, and boots that looked new but practical. Her hair was braided and pinned up securely. Good morning, Mr. Vance, she said, no trace of sleep in her voice despite the early hour. Tucker nodded, momentarily thrown by her appearance. Without the fashionable dress, she looked younger, more determined, and disturbingly capable. This is Honey, he said, indicating the Palomino mare. She's steady and forgiving, good for beginners. Dell approached the horse, extending a hand. Hello, beautiful girl. To Tucker's surprise, she didn't immediately try to pet the animal's nose as most novices did. Instead, she allowed Honey to smell her hand, then gently stroked the mare's neck when she seemed comfortable. You've been around horses before, Tucker observed. Carriage horses in Philadelphia, and I rode side saddle in the park on Sundays, Dell admitted. But that's hardly useful for ranch work. Tucker demonstrated the proper way to mount, explaining each step. Dell listened attentively, then copied his movements with only minimal awkwardness. Once seated, her posture was naturally good. We'll start with walking, Tucker said, mounting Ghost. Feel how she moves beneath you. A horse communicates through its body. You need to learn its language before giving commands. They spent the morning walking circles in the corral, Tucker explaining the basics of proper seat and rein handling. Dell absorbed everything without complaint, even when her inexperience showed. By midday, when they stopped for water, Tucker had to admit she was a quick study. Not terrible, he allowed, which from him was high praise. Dell wiped sweat from her brow. I believe that's your version of a compliment, Mr. Vance. Tucker almost smiled. Almost. We'll work on trotting tomorrow. Why not this afternoon? Because you won't be able to walk properly tomorrow if we do, he said bluntly. Muscles you didn't know you had are going to protest tonight. Dell nodded, accepting this. Then perhaps you could show me around the ranch this afternoon? I'd like to understand the operation before I start on my father's property. Tucker wanted to refuse, to retreat to his solitude, but Frank caught his eye from across the yard and gave a meaningful nod. Fine, he conceded. After you've had lunch and rested a spell. The afternoon tour revealed Dell Thompson to be observant and practical. She asked intelligent questions about water management, grazing rotation, and cattle breeding. When they passed the blacksmith's forge, she stopped to watch Will Jenkins shoe a horse, peppering him with questions that showed genuine interest. You're really serious about running that ranch yourself, Tucker commented as they walked back toward the main house. Did you think I wasn't? Dell challenged. Most women coming west either have a husband or are looking for one to do the actual work. Dell's expression tightened. I was engaged once, in Philadelphia. He had excellent prospects, a good family name, and the personality of lukewarm tea. When I broke it off to come west, my mother nearly disowned me. And your father? He understood, she said simply. He made his fortune in mining equipment, but he started with nothing. He respects determination. Tucker studied her for a moment. Determination won't stop a stampede or fix a broken fence in winter. No, Dell agreed. But knowledge and proper preparation might. That's why I'm here, Mr. Vance. To learn what I don't know. That evening, Tucker found himself watching Dell at the communal dinner table. She conversed easily with the ranch hands, showing none of the airs he'd expected. When young Jimmy Porter, barely 17 and new to ranch work, dropped a plate, she helped him clean up without hesitation. The next morning, Tucker found Dell already at the corral, doing stretching exercises. You were right about the muscles, she admitted with a rueful smile. But I'm ready for trotting. Trotting proved more challenging. Dell bounced painfully in the saddle at first, her face a mask of concentration as she tried to find the rhythm. After an hour, frustration showed in her tightened jaw. Enough, Tucker called. Dismount and watch. He demonstrated the posting trot on Ghost, explaining the movement. It's not just about not bouncing. It's a conversation between you and the horse. Feel the rhythm, then work with it, not against it. Dell nodded, her hazel eyes tracking his every move. When she remounted, Tucker came alongside her horse. May I? He asked, gesturing to her leg position. At her nod, he adjusted her knee angle and foot position. Keep your heels down, like this. It helps with balance. The contact was brief and professional, but Tucker felt an unexpected jolt when his hands briefly met the firm muscle of her calf. He stepped back quickly, covering his reaction with brisk instructions. By the end of the second day, Dell could maintain a reasonable posting trot for short periods. Her determination was evident in the set of her jaw and the way she immediately remounted after each mistake. As the days stretched into a week, Tucker found his initial impatience giving way to reluctant respect. Dell was tireless, arriving each morning before dawn and often practicing additional exercises in the evening. Her body was developing the lean muscle of a rider, her hands growing calloused where the reins had initially rubbed them raw. One morning, Tucker arrived to find Dell already in the corral, lunging Honey in circles, exactly as he'd shown her the previous day. You're early, he commented. Couldn't sleep, she admitted. I kept thinking about that new stallion you're breaking. The way you communicate with him. I want to understand it better. Tucker leaned against the fence. Some things can't be taught, only learned through doing. Then let me do more, she urged. I know you've been taking it easy on me because I'm a woman. I've been taking it easy because you're a beginner, he corrected. But if you want more. He whistled, and a ranch hand brought over a different horse, a spirited bay gelding named Rusty. This one has more spirit. Think you can handle him? Dell eyed the horse with respect but not fear. I'm willing to try. The morning turned challenging as Rusty tested his new rider. Dell was thrown once but got up immediately, dusting herself off. Tucker moved to help, but she waved him off. I'm fine, she insisted. Show me what I did wrong. Tucker demonstrated the correct way to sit the canter, how to move with the horse's momentum instead of against it. When Dell tried again, she managed to stay mounted through Rusty's initial burst of speed. Good, Tucker called, something like pride in his voice. Now you're riding! Dell's smile was radiant, transforming her face from pretty to stunning. Tucker found himself returning it before he could think better of it. That evening at dinner, Frank Hollister approached Tucker. Thompson girl's doing well from what I hear. The boys say she's got sand. Tucker nodded. She's determined, I'll give her that. And pretty too, Frank added with a sly glance. Not that you notice such things. Tucker frowned. She's a client, Frank. That's all. Frank chuckled. Sure, boy. That's why you smiled today for the first time in 3 years. Tucker had no response to that. The next day brought unexpected excitement. A spring thunderstorm rolled in during their morning ride, sending lightning crackling across the sky. They were a mile from the ranch when the first fat drops began to fall. We need shelter, Tucker called over the rising wind. There's a line shack just over that rise. They urged their horses to a canter, racing the storm to the small wooden structure. By the time they dismounted and led the horses inside the attached lean-to, rain was coming down in sheets. The line shack was simple, one room with a small stove, a narrow cot, and some basic provisions. Tucker lit a lamp in the stove, while Dell removed her sodden hat and wrung out her braid. Will it pass quickly? She asked, looking out the single window at the darkened sky. Spring storms are unpredictable, Tucker replied. Could be an hour, could be all day. Dell nodded, accepting this reality of Western life. She moved to help Tucker tend the horses, removing saddles and rubbing them down with old blankets stored in the shack. The close quarters made Tucker acutely aware of her presence. The rain had plastered her shirt to her body, revealing the feminine curves beneath her practical clothing. He turned away, focusing intently on building up the fire in the stove. You should stand closer to the heat, he said gruffly. Getting chilled out here can turn dangerous fast. Dell moved to the stove, extending her hands toward the growing warmth. Is this where the line riders stay during winter checks? Tucker nodded. One of 6 shacks spread around the property. Basic but functional. My father's ranch will need similar outbuildings, she mused. I've been making lists of everything required. It's a big undertaking, Tucker said. Even with hired hands. I know, Dell admitted, her voice softening. Sometimes in the quiet before sleep, I wonder if I've been foolish. If everyone who said a woman can't manage such things might be right. The vulnerability in her admission caught Tucker off guard. Why Wyoming? He asked. Why not stay in Philadelphia where life is easier? Dell was quiet for a moment, watching the flame through the stove's grate. Have you ever felt trapped, Mr. Vance? Like you're living someone else's idea of your life? Tucker thought of the war, of the years after when he drifted aimlessly, unable to settle. Maybe. In Philadelphia, my future was predetermined. Marriage to a suitable man, a house near my parents, children raised by nannies while I organized charity luncheons. She shook her head. I wanted something real. Something I built myself. Tucker studied her face in the lamplight. The determined set of her jaw, the intelligence in her eyes, the small scar near her temple that spoke of a childhood not entirely protected from harm. Tucker, he said suddenly. Dell looked up, confusion in her eyes. Pardon? My name. It's Tucker, not Mr. Vance. If we're going to be caught in a storm together, seems formal to stand on ceremony. A smile bloomed across her face. Tucker, then. And I'm Dell, not Miss Thompson. Something shifted between them in that moment, a barrier lowering. They talked as the storm raged outside, Dell asking about Tucker's background, drawing out stories of his time as a Union cavalry soldier, his years drifting through Colorado and Montana before settling in Wyoming. And what about family? She asked, sharing coffee he'd brewed on the stove. Lost my parents young. Raised mostly by my uncle until I was old enough to enlist. Tucker rarely spoke of his past, but something about Dell's genuine interest made the words come easier. You mentioned your mother nearly disowned you. How is it with her now? Dell sighed. Strained. She writes formal letters listing eligible bachelors who might consider a temporary Western adventure before bringing me back to civilization. Tucker found himself chuckling. And would you consider any of these fine gentlemen? Not a chance, Dell said firmly. I'd rather face a stampede alone than marry for convenience. The storm began to ease by mid-afternoon. As they prepared to leave, Dell paused at the door. Thank you, Tucker. Not just for the shelter, but for talking. For treating me like a person with a brain, Not just a woman with misguided ambitions. Tucker felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest, a warmth he'd thought long extinguished. You've earned respect. That's rarer than gold out here. The ride back was peaceful, the land freshly washed by rain, wildflowers already turning their faces to the emerging sun. When they reached the ranch, Tucker found himself reluctant for the day to end. Same time tomorrow? He asked as they unsaddled the horses. Del nodded. I'll be ready. The following weeks saw Del's skills improving rapidly. She graduated from basic riding to more advanced techniques: neck reining, cutting maneuvers, even basic roping. Tucker found himself looking forward to their daily sessions, his customary impatience replaced by something closer to anticipation. One evening, as they walked back from the stables, Del mentioned her father would be arriving the following week to inspect the property. He'll want to meet you, she said. To thank you for teaching me. Tucker nodded, a strange tension settling in his shoulders. Will you be leaving then? Going to your father's ranch? Del stopped walking, turning to face him. Yes. There's much to do before winter comes. Of course, Tucker said, his voice unnaturally stiff. You've learned enough to manage. Del studied his face in the fading light. Tucker, I was hoping. That is, my father will need experienced hands. Someone who understands horses, who could help establish a proper breeding program. Tucker's pulse quickened. Are you offering me a job, Miss Thompson? I'm suggesting a partnership, she corrected. Your expertise with my father's investment. A partnership, Tucker repeated, the word feeling significant in ways beyond its literal meaning. Would I report to you? A smile played at the corners of Del's mouth. We would work together, though I suspect there would be disagreements. More than a few, Tucker acknowledged, finding himself stepping closer to her. I'm not known for my agreeable nature. No, Del agreed, not backing away. You're known for your honesty and skill. The rest. We could negotiate. The air between them seemed to thicken. Tucker was acutely aware of her proximity, of the scent of sunshine and leather that clung to her skin. For weeks he maintained professional distance, but now, with her potential departure looming, that resolve was crumbling. Del, he began, uncertain what he meant to say. A shout from the bunkhouse broke the moment. One of the hands was calling Tucker for help with a colicky horse. He stepped back, the spell broken. I should see to that, he said. Del nodded, disappointment flashing briefly in her eyes. Of course. Good night, Tucker. He watched her walk toward her cabin, her straight-backed figure silhouetted against the evening sky, and felt something suspiciously like longing unfurl in his chest. The next morning brought new challenges as they moved beyond the confines of the ranch to open country. Tucker led Del through ravines and across streams, testing her ability to handle varied terrain. Her confidence had grown immensely. She handled Rusty with ease now, communicating with the spirited horse through subtle shifts in weight and pressure. They paused atop a rise overlooking a vast expanse of grassland. In the distance, the mountains stood purple against the horizon. This is what I came for, Del said softly. This freedom. Tucker watched her face, struck by how the western sun had burnished her skin to gold, how the wind had loosened strands of chestnut hair from her practical braid. She belonged here now, in a way he hadn't expected. Your father's property has views like this, he found himself saying. Better in some spots. There's a ridge that looks down over the whole valley. Del turned to him, hope bright in her eyes. You've been there? Recently? Tucker nodded. Rode out there yesterday. Wanted to see what you'd be working with. And? She pressed. It needs work, he admitted. Fences down, outbuildings in disrepair. But the land is good. Water source is reliable. With the right management. He trailed off, realizing how invested he sounded in a future that might not include him. The right partnership, Del corrected softly, holding his gaze. Tucker felt a tightness in his throat. Del, I'm not. He started, then stopped, unsure how to continue. Not what? She challenged. Not interested in building something lasting? Not capable of working alongside a woman? Not willing to admit there's something growing between us that has nothing to do with horses or ranching? The directness of her words, so typically Dell, broke through his carefully constructed walls. All of those things, he admitted. I've been alone a long time. Set in my ways. And impatient, she added with a hint of a smile. Don't forget that part. Despite himself, Tucker laughed. Yes, madam. Decidedly impatient. Until recently, Dell observed, guiding her horse closer to his. I've noticed you've found considerable patience for my endless questions and mistakes. Tucker's voice dropped lower. Maybe I found something worth being patient for. The admission hung between them, more significant than any declaration of feeling might have been from another man. Dell's eyes softened with understanding. Show me, she said suddenly. Show me the property today. I want to see it through your eyes before my father arrives. The request surprised him. It's a fair ride from here. I can handle it, she said with confidence that was not misplaced. Unless you don't think I'm ready? Tucker recognized the challenge in her words. Oh, you're ready for the ride, he said. Question is, are you ready for what comes after? Dell held his gaze, a woman who knew her own mind. I believe I am, Mr. Vance. The question is whether you are. They rode hard across the plains, Tucker setting a pace that would have been impossible for Dell a month ago. She kept up easily, her form natural and assured now. By midday, they crested a hill overlooking the Thompson property, 5,000 acres of potential stretching toward the mountains. The main house was solid but weathered, the barn in need of new roofing, corrals requiring repair. But the creek running through the property glinted silver in the sun, and the grazing land was rich with spring growth. It's beautiful, Dell breathed, dismounting to better survey her future home. Tucker tied their horses to a hitching post that miraculously still stood by the house. It could be, he agreed. With work. They walked the property together, Tucker pointing out issues needing attention, Dell making mental notes. When they reached the creek, they stopped to let the horses drink and rest in the shade of cottonwood trees. I can see why my father bought it, Dell said, removing her hat to enjoy the cool breeze. He has good instincts for value. And for people, Tucker added. He sent you to learn from me, after all. Dell laughed, the sound carrying across the water. Actually, that was my idea. I researched every horse trainer in the territory. Your name kept coming up. Tucker raised an eyebrow. You chose me? I did, she admitted. Though I expected someone older and considerably more talkative. Disappointed? He asked, half joking, half serious. Dell stepped closer, close enough that he could see the amber flecks in her hazel eyes. Not in the slightest. Tucker wasn't sure who moved first. Perhaps they both did, drawn together by forces neither had fully acknowledged until that moment. His hand found her waist as hers came to rest against his chest. The kiss, when it came, was tentative, at first a question being asked and answered simultaneously. Then Dell made a small sound of approval against his mouth, and restraint dissolved like morning mist. Tucker pulled her closer, his hand sliding up to cradle the back of her head. Dell matched his intensity, fearless in this as in everything else. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Tucker rested his forehead against hers. I'm still not an easy man, he warned. Dell smiled. And I'm not an easy woman. Perhaps that's why this works. Tucker tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, allowing himself the liberty of tracing the line of her jaw. Your father might have other ideas about who should run this ranch with you. My father wants my happiness, Dell said firmly. And he's a businessman above all. He'll recognize the value of our partnership. Is that what we're calling it? Tucker asked, a rare smile transforming his usually stern features. Dell laughed. For now. I suspect the terminology might evolve. They spent the afternoon exploring the property further, but now with an ease between them that transformed the excursion. Tucker found himself pointing out not just repairs needed but possibilities where additional corrals could go, how the creek could be dammed to create a stock pond, which fields would make the best horse pastures. As the sun began to lower, they reluctantly mounted to return to the Lazy H. Tucker reached over and caught Dell's hand before she could urge her horse forward. "I'm not good with words," he said simply. "But I want you to know this isn't just about the ranch for me." Dell's smile was radiant. "I know, Tucker. It isn't for me either." Charles Thompson arrived 3 days later, a barrel-chested man with Dell's determined chin and shrewd eyes. He inspected the Lazy H's operation with interest, listening carefully to Frank Hollister's explanations of their breeding program. When Tucker was introduced as his daughter's instructor, Thompson's handshake was firm. "Dell's letters have mentioned you frequently, Mr. Vance. She seems to think you're something of a miracle worker with horses." Tucker glanced at Dell, who stood nearby with a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "Your daughter's a quick study, sir. Makes teaching easy." Thompson laughed. "First time anyone's called teaching Dell easy. She's stubborn as her mother, God rest her soul." "Determined," Dell corrected with a smile. "And I come by it honestly, father." The next day, Tucker accompanied Dell and her father to the Thompson property. As they walked the grounds, Tucker found himself pointing out the same possibilities he'd shared with Dell. To his surprise, Thompson listened attentively, asking intelligent questions about costs and timelines. "You seem to have given this considerable thought, Vance," Thompson observed over lunch in the dusty main house. "Almost as if you had a personal interest in the place." Tucker met Dell's eyes across the table. "I might, sir. If that interest were welcome." Thompson's eyebrows rose. "I see." He looked between them, understanding dawning in his weathered face. "Dell, I assume you've had a hand in this development?" "Father," Dell said firmly, "Tucker and I have discussed a potential partnership. His expertise with horses combined with the capital you've provided could make this ranch exceptional." "Partnership," Thompson repeated thoughtfully. "Interesting term." Tucker straightened in his chair. "Mr. Thompson, I respect your daughter's intelligence and determination. I also care for her deeply. If you're asking my intentions, he's not," Dell interrupted, giving her father a warning look. "Because my father knows I make my own decisions about my future." Thompson held up his hands in surrender, though his eyes twinkled with amusement. "Far be it from me to interfere in a partnership already being negotiated. Though I would point out that certain legal arrangements might make property ownership more straightforward." Dell blushed fiercely. "Father!" Tucker, to his own surprise, found himself smiling. "I appreciate plain speaking, sir. And if your daughter would consider a more permanent arrangement, I would be honored." "Tucker!" Dell exclaimed. "Are you? Is that not precisely how I planned to ask?" Tucker admitted. "But yes, if you'll have me." The silence that followed lasted only a moment before Dell's face broke into a radiant smile. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I will." Thompson cleared his throat loudly. "Well then, I believe this calls for the bottle of brandy I brought from Philadelphia. And perhaps a discussion of wedding dates and property titles." 6 months later, the Thompson Vance Ranch hosted its first social gathering, a combined wedding celebration and barn raising. The main house had been restored, the barn rebuilt with the help of neighbors, and the first breeding stock of quarter horses installed in newly constructed corrals. Dell wore a simple cream dress, her hair adorned with wildflowers. Tucker, uncomfortable but handsome in a new suit, couldn't take his eyes off her as Judge Wilson conducted the brief ceremony on the front porch. "Never seen Tucker smile so much," Frank Hollister commented to Charles Thompson as they watched the couple exchange vows. "Girls worked a miracle on him." Thompson nodded sagely. "She always was good at taming wild things. Takes after her mother that way." After the ceremony and subsequent feast, as neighbors and friends danced to fiddle music in the new barn, Tucker pulled his bride away for a moment of privacy by the creek where they'd first kissed. "Happy, Mrs. Vance?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist. Dell leaned back against his chest, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. Completely. Though I'm still expecting you to lose patience with me eventually. Tucker turned her in his arms, his expression more open than it had ever been before her. That's the thing about you, Dell. You make me want to slow down, to take my time. He brushed a kiss against her forehead. Turns out I had patience all along. Just needed the right reason to find it. Dell laughed, the sound merging with the creek's gentle burbling. And all I needed was someone to teach me to ride, she teased, rising on tiptoe to kiss him properly. As twilight deepened around them, the sounds of celebration drifted from the barn, a new beginning in a land of possibility, built on patience neither knew they possessed until they found each other.